everybody, it's Jean here. I'm in my sewing room. I'm working on a project that Jen and I have started. Jen has already started hers. I believe that was the last video I put up. And it's our collage quilt. And we, as you know, we had gone to the quilt show a while ago and we bought two patterns. And the pattern that I bought personally it's called The Dress by Laura Heine. I have been corrected. I thought her name was Hine. I stand corrected. The Dress by Laura Heine. Jen bought a pattern and hers was, I believe, called Cake Stand or The Cakes, something like that. She's been working on hers. You can refer back to our last video. But as we were saying in our last video, both Jen and I have bought the pattern and the instructions, but we're not following the instructions per se. It was brought to my attention, I have made, on video, I have shown me making two different collage quilts. I made my bird on a wire quilt and I made my penny farthing quilt. And somebody very astutely had asked me what's the difference in what you're doing now and what you were doing then, because I showed my process of making my collage quilts. I also have my other large bicycle quilt that I was a show and tell. That was a collage quilt. I also have my mermaid quilt, and I also did a beach scene, all of which are for sale in my shop. I didn't do tutorials on them, but all of these quilts, my collage quilts, are for sale in my shop, but I only tutorialed two of them. Why did I buy a pattern? Because I didn't need a pattern for my others. It just came out of my head. Well, the reason why is, to be honest, I had seen this quilt made up dozens of times on Pinterest. I've seen it and I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. I can do that. I'll copy it. And then I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. Now, there's a whole school of thought. If something's out in the internet, then it's free to copy. But for artists and designers who spend a lot of time making their patterns and having things made from their patterns, I don't think they want their images to be copied. I'm different. I'm different. If somebody, I'm a little tiny drop in a bucket. If somebody wanted to copy my penny farthing quilt and make a pattern from it and sell it and make $1 million and it's my original design and they do it, I could care less. I personally could care less. And it's like, well, why would those people get the credit? Well, I'm thinking they've done all the work. I just made one quilt. And more power to people. This is my personal viewpoint, and I know a lot of people don't agree with me. But more power to them if they want to go through the copyright and the lawyers and the this, just to copy my quilt, let them do it. I think imitation is the finest form of flattery. But I didn't do that. I didn't copy this quilt. I went out and I bought the pattern. Why did I buy the pattern? Because it is a very specific girl, and it's very large. So again, we're not following the instructions. I'm using her pattern. Now, this is how the pattern came. It came in two rectangular sections, even longer. It had legs down there. What I have done, I have cut away this corner and that corner. Too much paper. I also cut away the bottom of the pattern that had her legs. It was another 20 inches or so. Just too much paper. I can eyeball her legs when it comes to it, and I'll show you what I've done. The first thing I did is I taped her two pieces together. I didn't do a very good job. I was really tired. And it's all like crinkled. She needs Botox on her lips. It's a mess. But I taped it together. I can mess about with her face. Now, I think you can see it. I'll show you up close in a minute. I took a black Sharpie and I went all over the writing. If you can see this, her hair and her hat. I'm not worried about her hair. I'm not worried about her hat right now. Her flower garland hat. I just Sharpied her entire body over the pattern to make it darker. the reason I did that, I have this pattern and I was thinking, well, how am I going to get that to my fabric? Which brings me back again to square one. What fabric am I going to be using? It's a collage quilt. So I think I was showing you before, Jen and I have been cutting out to our heart's delight. We have been cutting out tons and tons of fabric from and isolating images. I'm using more floral fabric. I've been collecting fabric. I had purchased a few bits of specific themed floral fabric at the quilt show. Awesome. You only need a little bit to isolate a little piece. So I have been going to town, cutting out images, all sorts of images from my fabrics. Brilliant fabrics, darker fabrics, leaf fabrics. I've been cutting and cutting and cutting. Again, I will just address very quickly. I bought really good scissors. Karen K. Buckley, her little collage scissors, unbelievable. These are the 6-inch scissors. They have a serrated edge. Awesome scissors. I addressed that in the last video. Now, again, backing up, I thought, well, what is my girl going to be on? In the pattern, it shows the girl on a fairly busy background. And it's funky. It's very funky. She is funky. But I decided to do it a little bit more muted. And then I thought, well, I saw this, I've seen, and I have a lot of it, the Paris-themed fabric with script and keys. And to be honest, I think it's done to death, but I still love it. I still love it. So I had some here, but it was 45 inches wide. It's fine, quilting cotton. This pattern is about 48 inches. The quilt ends up 50 inches. Yeah, I think the quilt ends up 50 inches wide by 70 inches long. And I was thinking, oh, I think that's what happens. You have to put on borders. You have to put borders on the side of your quilt. I didn't necessarily want to do that because your fabric's only going to measure about 42 inches quilting cotton. And I thought, I don't want to do that. I just want my background to be subtle. I really want my girl to pop. But then I thought, well, I'm going back to my penny farthing quilt. I wanted some flowers around the border. Maybe, again, just maybe on one side. And I'm going to bring my camera down and show you what I've done. I've just placed some things. I've not glued anything or anything like that. But I went to Joann Fabrics and I thought, I wonder if I could get 60-inch wide fabric. Well, of course they have 60-inch wide fabric. So I can just get 72 inches, 75 inches a length. 60. No piecing for my background. I went to the home deck section and I will show you. I got a beautiful cream tan, fairly goldish, little bit of gray Paris print. Again, done to death, but still pretty. 60-inch wide home deck fabric. It's 100% cotton. I am making a wall hanging. I'm not bothered now. It's a wall hanging. It's not going to be washed. I probably will bling this out a bit. Mine is a wall hanging. Perhaps if you are making a quilt, you want to pre-shrink your cotton, blah, blah, all of that. I'm not going to. I just bought this lovely wide fabric. Boom, got my background. So then I thought, well, how am I going to get her on there? And I know the instructions are in depth, which I haven't even read. And at first I thought, well, how am I going to do that? I know I can trace her with tracing paper. I'm old school. If you remember a good old-fashioned tracing paper and a tracing wheel. Well, I did an experiment. It didn't really show up. And I thought, well, how in the else world am I going to get her onto my fabric? So then I thought, well, however I get her onto my fabric, with a collage quilt, you have to be careful that your background doesn't shadow through if you have lighter fabrics. It's fine if you're putting your girl on a white background. My background, again, is, I will show you in a moment, from a distance reads very neutral, reads very cream. But up close, if I put a paler face or her chest or her arms or her legs, you're going to see the shadowing through it. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to double layer a piece of skin tone fabric on her face, on her chest, her arms and her legs, so my background doesn't shadow through it, right? So then I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna cut these bits out. I don't know how I'm gonna do that yet. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I'll have to come to that point. This is all I'm addressing for this video right now. I'll address that in the next video. Then I thought, well, I think it would be nice if I had the entire girl as a background, so my background doesn't shadow at all through anything. Now I'm pretty assured that with my darker fabrics on her skirt, on her hat, that it's not going to shadow through. But I didn't take that. Chance. And also, it was much easier to do what I've done. I was listening to Jen's idea, and she used a light box. Well, her patterns were this big. Well, what's a light box? I don't know how you do a light. You shine a. I don't know how you do that. I did it in 7th grade, I think. Something, you get a light box and you trace. And I thought, well, that's how Jen did it. We weren't discussing it. I didn't know how she did it, but I was thinking, well, if I have a light box behind this, I can put up a piece of muslin, and I can just a cheap piece of muslin I had. I can go from here to there. I cut her legs off, as I said. I'm just worried about her skirt up to her head right now. So what I did is I taped this piece of pattern to my French door, patio door outside. I taped her to the 1/2 of my door. I then had a piece of muslin, which I will show you in the next few clips after I explain what I did. I took some still pictures so you can see what I did. I taped her to my door. I then took a piece of muslin, just cream muslin, and I taped that over here and over here, and with just a pencil, I very lightly, you could see the muslin, very, very lightly traced all of the black Sharpie onto my muslin. So now I'm just going to show you the few steps how I traced her onto my muslin. I want to show you now how I have traced my pattern onto my muslin. As you can see, I've traced her arms, her vest there, and then I've traced all the ruffles. And as you can see, I cut her out. I cut her out, and I've just placed it on my background, which is that very pretty, creamy Paris keys, crowns, very, very pretty background. Very pretty, 100%, a bit heavier. The quilt's going to be a little bit heavier. Cotton. So I cut her out. I cut her out the same size as the pattern, maybe a hair smaller. Because now, try to go slow here, now when I fill in these pieces here, I'll just make them slightly larger. Just slightly larger. Now I'll start attaching the outside pieces, overlapping them just slightly, and I'm going to be using a little tiny bit of glue when I put the collage down. But before I get to that point, I'm going to affix her to my background fabric, just along the edges with a drop of glue, and maybe 1 or 2 pieces in here as I go along. Now my look that I'm going for, and again I have just literally just laid these on here willy-nilly, is basically that's the look. I've started to cut out dozens and dozens and dozens of images, floral images, and that is my border. This piece of fabric from there over to there is 60 inches. I haven't pieced anything, and I'm not going to be adding any side borders. I'm pleased with that. I will just be slicing off that nice, making a small rounded corner, and then bind it with something. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to bind this. But here are my floral images. Oh, there's a little ow. There's a heart. I just cut, and as we were saying before, it's quite addictive. It really is quite addictive. Now, I'm not sure if that's how it's going to end up. I have to take everything apart. I have to start gluing. I'm going to work on the girl first. And I don't know if I'm going to do all the way around, or if I'm going to do maybe just the top left side and the bottom right sides. I'm not quite sure. Now here, remember I said I'm not worried about the girl's face. I'm going to deal with that later. This is, again, I've just laid these here. I don't know if this is what I'm going to have. But she has a floral flower crown. And so I didn't have to worry about that funky shape or anything coming out. And I didn't have to worry about her hair. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with her hair. It calls for scraps of fabric. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. That'll come when it comes. And I'm not sure. The pattern, as you saw, calls for one eye and a mouth. A bit abstractedly Picasso-y. I'm not sure, again, what I'm going to do. If I'm going to make fairly realistic eyes or a funky face. I'm not sure. Again, here is my foundation. And I think it did call for a foundation. I think I didn't even read the pattern through, but it calls for two products, Steam a Seam and a foundation. So I guess this is the foundation. I'm just using cheap muslin. And then I will be gluing. I like my Elmer's glue. I've done it on 5 or 6 collage quilts. It works great. And then what I do is I'm going to free motion quilt this. I'm going to sew all of my bits down. I believe the original pattern is just an iron-on collage quilt, which is fine. But I prefer sewing. So when it comes to it, I'll take this over to my machine and I will quilt it. I'll quilt around the images. I'll quilt just like I did my penny farthing quilt. You could see that really come alive with my free motion quilting. But for now, I have just wanted to share with you how I've transferred my dress pattern onto a foundation, and I just cut it out. Did not take me long. I wasn't perfect, I wasn't perfect, but all of this is going to be covered. But I'm assured now, when I go to affix her skin color fabric onto here, that background, which has some gray in it, is not going to shadow through. So she's pretty, isn't she? What do you think? And now also you can see that the background is busy. It's a busier, but it reads neutral. Do you see that? Far away, it reads just neutral, and it reads like cream, which is the look I wanted. And I get the width I wanted using home deck fabric. I got 2 yards of home deck fabric. It was 50% off at Joann's. So I'm thrilled. And I might make my flower border even bigger. I'm not quite sure. But this is where I've gotten so far. So stay tuned for Jen and mine's collage quilts. Okay, thanks, folks. See ya.